Well, I went to the convent. It was a convent when I went. It was in 1930. And I've been there ever since. 1930 in September. September the 13th, I got off the train at Yankton. A couple of years before that. And I told our pastor that I wanted to be a sister. And he said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "I don't know." Then he said, "Well, then I know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, I know." He said, "You're going to Yankton." I said, "Where's Yankton?" He said, "It's in South Dakota." Well, then, and I misunderstood him. I thought he said Yankston, so I always thought there was an S in there, and there is no S. It's just Yankton. Anyway, then he took me to meet the sisters in Gardner. We had a school in Gardner, Colorado. It's a little town, real small. I think it's a farming community, and it's kind of close to Walsenburg, up in the mountains. He took me there to meet the sisters, and I was with them for a week. Then he came back to get me, take me home again. And in the meantime, my grandparents had written to my parents in Tiffany that I wanted to go to the convent, and they told their pastor. And their pastor said, "Don't let her go this year. Wait, make her wait at least 1 year."
Okay.
And if she still wants to go after a year, then let her go, but don't let her go this year. So they didn't. By the time I got back to Alamosa to home, when I got out of the car, they told me I couldn't go, that my parents wouldn't let me. So I felt really kind of bad because I wanted to go right away. So I didn't. And I went back to school. I went back to high school in Alamosa for that 1 year. And I'd spent a lot of time teaching catechism after school, preparing first communicants and such. We'd meet after school in church. And I was then in the 10th grade. And then at the end of that year, not the end of the year, at the end of the school year, I still wanted to go to the convent. So then my parents gave in and said I could go if I wanted to. So in the last of August, beginning of September, I went back to Gardner, and spent a week or two with the sisters, and then they got me ready to go to Yankton, and I took the train from Walsenburg, I think, and they had written all my itinerary on paper and what I should do at every place. I had to get a ticket every spot. I don't know why they didn't get my ticket the way through. I had to get a ticket in Walsenburg, and then when the next stop, I had to get another ticket in the next spot until I got to Yankton. I don't know how many tickets I got, but I always had to buy a ticket every stop, which I think now we can get a ticket all the way through without any bother.
Well, what led up to your decision to go into the convent? What made you even think about that way of life?
I have no idea. It just came. I don't think there was anything except that, siblings are always trying to help do better than the one, trying to beat each other. And I always wanted to be a teacher. And then I lived with Grandma and Grandpa, and we had my two cousins who were my Uncle Mark's daughters, and he had died, and their mother had died, so they lived with us. And we always wanted to. We kept deciding what we were going to do, and we always wanted to be better than the next one, And then I think that's what happened, that we just kept fighting to see who would do the best. And then when I got to Yankton, there was nobody there to meet me at the depot. So I'm not really sure what I did, but I got to the convent. I think somebody picked me up and took me up there. I don't remember how I got there. I didn't walk, but I got out at the depot and there was nobody there to meet me. I guess they weren't sure they knew I was coming, but they didn't know just exactly what time, I guess. So there was nobody there to meet me. So somebody took me to Yankton, and we came in the front door, and then they called Sister Bertha, who was the candidate's mistress, in the parlor, and some of the other candidates came in to meet me, because they were all excited because they were getting a new candidate. So then the first thing Sister Bertha did when she came in is take out my clothes. The sisters had given me a kind of a big bonnet, and she didn't like that, so she took that off, and then she told me I should come. So it was near supper time, after supper, and she would give me my uniform. So after supper we went, and she gave me a uniform and a different headdress. And then she said I should stay in bed in the morning and I shouldn't get up for prayer. And another one of the candidates had to stay with me because I didn't know what to do, see. So another one had to stay in bed. And we only got up to go to Mass later in the morning. I got there on Saturday, and the next day was Sunday, so Mass was later in the morning. So we slept later, and then when it was time to get up, that other candidate awakened me, and we got dressed, and then we went to the chapel to pray for Mass already. The other people had been up and had breakfast and all kinds of things. We hadn't had anything yet. So, and then after that, everything went as smooth. You get used to it, you can do what everybody else does. Usually we got, in the morning, the mistress would tell us what we're to do that day, And I spent most of my time in the garden, picking weeds and picking good things too, Then in the middle of the morning, we always went into the convent for lunch. We called it lunch. It wasn't lunch, it was sort of a, what do you call it? You just go in and eat a little bit. Or the sister who had charge of the garden sometimes would go and she would pick young, tender carrots and wash them and give them to us to eat, And we liked that. I still like carrots. And she always would bring those nice fresh carrots, they were just nice. She just got them off the garden and washed them and gave them to us. And we enjoyed them very much. We liked those carrots. Or we'd go home, and then we usually had bread and butter and jelly, sometimes peanut butter, which I liked very much. And then we'd go back out into work until dinner time, lunch. We called it dinner. It was the midday meal. We'd come in and we'd do that. We'd eat, and then we had prayer. And then after that, we could go work again. Sometimes we'd go back to the garden, but if it was too hot, then we'd do something else. We'd work inside. That's something. We didn't go out in the heat. Like the heat of the afternoon, the heat of the morning isn't as bad. We'd be up there in the morning, but it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as hot out there in the morning as it was in the afternoon. So in many afternoons, we didn't go out at all. We stayed inside and did something else, other things to do. You always find something to do in the convent. There's always something to do. You're never without work. We had a number of grade schools. We had high schools. We have a college. Okay, then we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hospitals in which we took care of the sick. And now we only have 1 hospital left. This year we didn't give them away. I don't know what we did, but we we had somebody else sponsor the hospitals. Now we only have one left. The one in Yankton is the only hospital we have left. And we still have the college, but we have lost a lot of our other schools. We don't have very many schools left anymore. And the reason for that is that we don't have very many teaching sisters anymore. So many of the sisters have gone to doing something else. Like they do parish work and stuff like that. They don't go into the schools, or they do CCD work. They're always doing something, but they haven't gone. But the schools have lost their teachers. So, in the school I last worked, I had worked there for 26 years. In the high school in Hardington, Nebraska, I had taught there for 26 years, and then I got sick. Then, of course, I couldn't go on. Then this past year, in June, the high school did not close, but the grade school didn't close, but they don't have any sisters anymore. Well, I was a candidate for 2 years, and one of the reasons for that was because I had to finish high school. I hadn't finished high school. I had 2 years to finish. So I had to finish my high school before I could go into the novitiate. And the first year I took a complete load of high school. I was a junior. I had all the subjects that I needed. And then on my senior year, I needed only about half the credits that I could have gotten. So I went to school half a day. In the morning, I went to school and took 2 or 3 subjects, and that's all, because I didn't need any more credits. And in the afternoon, I did something else. I did a lot of sewing in the afternoon. At night, I studied, but in the morning, I went to school. And in the afternoon, I sewed. And I feel bad yet because I feel that I was handicapped because I had to learn to type by myself after I was teaching in high school. I had to learn to type, not so much was I teaching in high school, but because I became the librarian, and I had to learn to type. So I learned it. I had to learn it. But if I would have had a complete senior year. I could have taken type and write there, and I would have been better prepared than I was. When I started being a librarian, I wouldn't have had to start to learn to type then. When I would have known how to do it. And you can't be a librarian and not be able to type, because you have to type so many cards and things. When you become a novice, you get your habit. And but instead of wearing a black veil, we wore a white veil. So everybody knew we were novices because we wore the habit, but we had a white veil, and that lasted for 1 year, and that's when you learn. That's during the novitiate is when you learn what your duties are as a sister. You study the rule, and you get instructions about being a sister. We had instructions every day. First thing in the morning after breakfast, we went to our little community room, and Sister Ida instructed us. And then when our year was over, we asked to make vows. There were 12 of us that were novices. No, wait a minute, there were only 11 of us. One of the candidates left. But we were 11, and the 11 of us asked to make profession, and we all got in. And then we were sisters, and we made profession on the 16th of August, because we got our habit on the 15th, and you have to have a whole year and a day of novitiate. So we made profession on the 16th of August of the next year, and then the day after, we all went to the missions. We had to go. I went to teach in a little town in South Dakota called Epiphany, and I taught the third, fourth, and fifth. No, wait a minute. Fourth, fifth, and sixth grades, all in one room, 3 grades. We were 3 teachers. Was one teacher taught the first, second, and third, and I taught the fourth, fifth, and sixth, and then the last 2 were taught by another sister. She taught the 7th and 8th grades. That's all the grades we had. We had 3 rooms, and we taught. And that was my hardest year of teaching, because I had an awful lot of discipline problems. It was tough to handle those kids. The year before, they had a teacher, not a sister. They had a teacher, and one of the boys' sister was his teacher. So he made life miserable for her, and he made life miserable for me afterwards too. The cook sister, at recess I'd go down there, to the kitchen, and I'd tell her how terrible it is. And she said to me, "Don't worry, you're doing much better. At least you keep them quiet." The year before, they didn't even keep them quiet. At least you're keeping them quiet. Next year, I didn't go back there. I went to another little town in Epiphany. I went and taught there, and I had only 2 grades. I had 3rd and 4th grade, only 2 grades, but I had a whole classroom full of children, and the discipline wasn't as bad there. It was much easier to handle those children. They were more anxious to learn, so they were not. There were very little problem there with discipline, and I taught 2 years there. And the second year I was there, my mother died. And that was a very traumatic experience for me, because I was up, it was a Saturday when I got the news, and I was up in my room studying, getting ready for the week. And I came into the sister's room, and the telephone rang, and sister answered it, and she said, "It's for you." And I thought, for me? Who'd want to be writing? Who would be calling me? But I went to the telephone, and the man said to me, "Do you know this man?" And he told me my father's name. And I said, "Yes, he's my father." And then he said, "Then I have a telegram for you." So he read me the telegram that my mother had died. So when he stopped talking to me, then I turned around and I told the sisters what he said. Everybody got excited, because then we decided, well, I'd want to go to the funeral naturally. So sister called Yankton and see if I could go, but it so happened that I couldn't make it, because the funeral was supposed to be on a Tuesday, and I couldn't get there till Thursday, according to the way I had to go. See, you didn't fly those times, you'd go by train. So I'd have to go to Yankton first, get the train from there, and I think it would have taken me till Thursday till I got there, and I would have missed the whole thing anyway. So I didn't go. And then on Monday when I went to school, I went to school, of course, we all went to school, but the people in town were all excited. They were mad because I didn't get to go to my mother's funeral. They didn't expect me to be in school on Monday, and I was. So there was a lot of controversy in the town because I didn't get to go.
Did Dad ever consider bringing you home after?
Well, I don't remember who told. I think he probably did. Somebody told me that when Mother died, some of his friends and some of the family told him, "Well, now you can bring Sister home," because I didn't have perpetual vows even. I had just been a sister 2 years, so you can bring her home. And Dad said, if she were married, I wouldn't ask her to come home. So the Lord will take care of us, and He did. He did. He took care of them. Susan was just a little girl, 2 years old or so, or 3, and Josephine was 18 months old when my mother died. And Louise was just 8 or 9 years old, so she was a little girl too. But Dad said he had Josephine taken care of by my aunt, Ana Maria. I don't know. I think she's my father's first cousin. She took her. She took the baby home with her, take care of her. But Dad kept Susan and everybody else together, and he took care of the family by himself.
Did you ever consider going home, or were you?
When I got homesick, I did. And the dumb thing about it is, I didn't get homesick about important things, but I got homesick because the sun set into the river. I couldn't stand it. I wanted the sun to go behind the mountain. There weren't any mountains there. So when the sun set in the evening, it set into the river. And every time I saw the sun set into the river, I cried because I wanted to go home. I didn't want the sun to set into the river. But I didn't, and I never told Sister Bertha that I wanted to go home because I was afraid she'd send me. I never told her. When I was teaching in Epiphany, my first year, it was Sister Aquinas. She helped me. She kept encouraging me, And no matter how hard I had it, she was always by me. She always was my safeguard, And then the next year when I was in Dimmock, I still had some hard time, but not as much. And then it was Sister Marcel that always encouraged me and kept helping me. So I always had somebody to lean on. Oh, there goes an airplane. And then I was in Dimmock 2 years, and then I went to Kranzberg. And there I had a very easy time. It was really nice. I was there 6 years, and I had very, very little problem, either with the kids or with anything else. Everything seemed to go fine after that. You have to have experience first, and then you can handle almost anything. See, there I had the first, second, and third grades. First, second, and third. And I taught first, second, and third for 6 years there. And then where did I go? Oh, and I went to Tabor, South Dakota. And I taught first, second, and third, and fourth grade there for 2 years. I can't see it. I guess it's landing.
Okay, you taught at Tabor?
I was at Tabor for 2 years. And then I was sent up to North Dakota to Selfridge. It was a new school. We took that school that year. It was new. It was a public school. So we taught in the public school. And I taught the first, second, and third grade there too. And there I had some cute little kids. They were so cute. Little boys about like that. They were so cute. And they were easy to teach, real easy to teach. I had a real easy time with them. And one little boy would bring me a bar of candy every day. Every day. They owned the store, they had a store. So I think he just went to the store and took one. He brought me a bar every day. So at the end of the week, I had bars for all the sisters. It's real cute. And after that, I stayed in North Dakota and I went to Richardson. There I taught the 5th and 6th, and then the 7th and 8th grades. And I was there 3 years. And then I came home and I didn't go to teach that year. Then the next year I had to go to get my degree. And I went to Atchison, Kansas to finish. To Saint Scholasticus in Atchison. I went back to get the rest of the credits I needed for a bachelor's degree.
What kind of degree in what?
Well, in science, I had chemistry and physics and mathematics mostly. I had Spanish too. I had classes in Spanish, and I had chemistry, physics. I don't think I had biology. I don't remember. Anyway, and I graduated that year. I had enough credits to graduate. Then I went to teach in Hartington for 2 years, and I taught chemistry, and the biology teacher was changed and sent someplace else. So Sister said, "Well, can you teach biology?" And I said, "No, I've never had biology. I never had biology at all, not in high school, any place." I said, I never had biology, either in high school or college. I never had it. So, she said, "As long as you can teach chemistry, you can teach biology." So I got my biology books and began studying biology. And then it didn't take very long. And she called me back to her office one day and she said, "You know, what else you're going to have to teach?" And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "You're going to have to teach bookkeeping." I said, "I've never had bookkeeping, sister." Well, he said, "You know mathematics, you can handle some bookkeeping." So I had to study bookkeeping. And she said, and she herself had a degree in bookkeeping. She said, if you get in trouble, I can help you. So I started learning bookkeeping. And I used to spend my Saturday afternoons, or almost all the day, I spent in my room studying bookkeeping. See, biology wasn't as bad because I could read that. It wasn't so bad, but the bookkeeping, oh man, I really struggled with that. But I had a really good class. They really wanted to learn, and they did, because if you want to do it, you don't need a teacher. So I taught bookkeeping that year too. And then the funny part of it is, at the end of the year, one of the graduates from school got a job with a man who owned I don't know whether it was a Ford garage or a Chevrolet, but anyway, he sold cars. And when the auditors came, they told him that in the whole county, this boy, that I had taught, had the best books of anybody else. And he said to Sister, "You must really have a very good teacher there." And we laughed because we didn't have a teacher. The teacher learned it with the kids.
What's the date of your birthday?
November the 4th,
What year?
1911.
All right, so you got your degree,
Mm-hmm.
and what followed after that?
I went to teach in Hartington, Nebraska, and I taught high school. That's when I started to teach bookkeeping and biology and chemistry that I didn't. Well, I knew chemistry. The only thing I did, biology and bookkeeping, I didn't know. I had to learn it with the kids. I spent the whole Saturday after I got my work done, my cleaning and stuff like that done. I spent the rest of the day in my room studying bookkeeping. And sometimes it was tough. I couldn't understand it, and my stomach got upset. So I was so worried about it, that even my stomach got upset because I couldn't understand that biology. Not the biology, the bookkeeping.
Did it ever get any better?
Oh yes, toward the end of the year I could handle it. And then that summer, I took it in Yankton. I took bookkeeping. And it was so easy for me. I was helping everybody else because I had learned it by myself. Everybody that had trouble, would come to me, and I would help them because that was for me very, very easy because I had struggled with it for a year. But I never taught it again. Just did 1 year. Well, I was in Hartington 2 years. Then I went to York, Nebraska. And I taught in high school there too. I was there 8 years. And the 8th year, I taught, in the morning, I taught kindergarten. And in the afternoon, I taught in high school upstairs. And then I went to Salem, South Dakota, and taught in the high school. And there I taught chemistry, physics, and math only. And those were my fields, so that was no trouble. I could do that. And I was there 6 years. And then in 1964, I went back to Hartington. And I was there for 26 years until I got sick in 1991, February, and I had to quit. I got sick in February of 1991, about the end of the year, the end of the month. So they had to hire a teacher to finish those 3 months of school that year.
Did you have any exceptional students at the time?
Oh yes, many of them, especially in physics and chemistry. I had really very good students. They wanted to learn, and they did learn. That's a time when, at the end of the year, around early May or late April, they went to take tests at what's TechU? What's the other one? What's the other name? TechU College. It's in Iowa, I think. See, and it's partly Japanese and partly American. I can't remember where the American is. The name of it is they went there and took tests in different subjects, And we sent boys and girls in physics and chemistry and computer science. I didn't teach that, but somebody else did. Computer science and stuff. And we came out number 1. When the kids came home, they were number 2. And they brought the number 2 trophies, home. And then about a week later, we got a letter from them that after they went through this thing again, checked through, they found out that we were first. We had beat the other guys, but they didn't want to take the trophies away from them. So we just kept the second trophies. Well, I lived with my grandparents in Alamosa from the time I was a little girl. I remember when my father put me in the train in Chama, and told the conductor to take care of me. And I was so little. I remember I was so little that when they set me in the seat, I could see my feet. My feet was at the end of the seat, and I could see they were sitting straight up here at the end of the seat. And then the conductor took really, really good care of me. And when I got to Alamosa, Grandpa was there to pick me up. He was there to pick me up. And then after that, I lived with them all the time until I went to the convent. After I was old enough to go to school, that was the reason I was there, to go to school, because where we lived, there was no school. There were not even primary schools. There's nothing there for school. So Uncle Porfirio, that's why he moved. That's why he lived. He always went in winter to Blanco so his children could go to school. And we went and stayed with our grandmother. So we stayed with Grandma and went to school. And when Gabriel, my next brother after me, he was only 2 years old, 2 years younger than I, and about 3 days, because he was born on the 7th of November and I on the 4th. And he came for first grade. And he lived with us that 1 year. But after that, he didn't. I think we had by that time moved to Tiffany, and there was school there.
Where were your parents living at the time that didn't have schools?
In New Mexico, in what they call Carrizo. It was just, there was nothing there at all except farms. And we had one farm and my Uncle Porfirio lived a ways away, and he had a farm. And everybody who lived in that place had a farm, and that's all there was. There was nothing else.
Did your father have his own farm there?
Yeah. He had, you know how they did that? The government gave you a tract of land if you lived in it and cultivated it. So he had 160 acres of land. We still have it. It's still there, and it still belongs to us. And we rent it. Somebody plants mostly wheat there. But the house is gone.
What do you remember about the house in those days before you went to school?
Well, the house was, my dad built it himself, and he built it from logs, not the long logs, but the ones that stand up. Built it, and then it was, then to fill the cracks, they put in mud. And then it was inside, it was painted or whitewashed inside. And we had 2 rooms, a big kitchen and a big bedroom, and that's all. So we all slept in the same room, but it was a great big room. That's all. And for a while, when we first moved there, we didn't have a house of our own. There was no house on the farm, because it wasn't even cultivated. It was just a piece of land. There was no house there. So we lived in on the next farm in a frame house. And there was another family living in the same house, but there were two apartments. So we lived in one apartment, they lived in another apartment right there. Then after a while, my father bought that farm. So we had both farms, and that one they could irrigate. The ditch ran right through it. It ran right across. The house was like here, and the ditch was here, passed right in front of the house. And we had water from there. It was good water too, from the ditch. And the animals could drink there. And you could irrigate, the way they irrigated, they had the big ditch, and then beside the big ditch, there was a little ditch about like so. And the water went from the big ditch into the little ditch. Then if you wanted to irrigate, then you had little ditches like this between the rows of whatever you planted. And then the water went from the small ditch into the little bitty ditches and watered the plants. I don't know how they got the water from the big ditch to the little ditch, but they got it. My father and the boys did that. and we irrigated, and we had wheat and and garden, and we had a big garden.
What did the family do for fun back then? What do you remember doing as a family?
Not much. The boys and I went to dances when we were old enough. And my mother and father, every Sunday, they went horseback riding. That was their fun. They went back, or I don't know where they went, but they went horseback riding just for fun, not for any utilitarian reason. They went horseback riding. And then when I got to be about 14, 15 years old, my father decided I was old enough to ride the horse and I could go with him, see. So he was going to teach me how to ride a horse, and she got me on a horse, and the dumb thing wouldn't go. It would not go. That horse wouldn't go with me on it. He knew that I was scared to death, I guess. And the horse wouldn't go. So that was a failure. I never learned to ride a horse. And I never went riding with my parents because I couldn't make a horse go. Stood still. Even when my dad tried to pull him from the front, the horse would not budge, not with me on him. That's one failure my father had with me, and then we had another failure. There was one time I don't know where we were coming from in our little Model T Ford, and he decided I should learn to ride, to drive, and he was going to teach me how to drive, but he pitched the worst price to teach me how to drive at the foot of a hill, and of course I couldn't make that car go up that hill for anything. So he gave up on that one too. So there were two failures. We lived in a three-bedroom house, but it was not brick, it was lumber. And it was painted green, light green, and then trimmed with dark green. It was kind of a nice looking house. It had a porch in the front and a little tiny porch in the back. And we had an outdoor well. It was an artesian well, so it had really very good water. And during the winter, it ran all the time. The water ran all the time, and it ran into it wasn't a ditch, I don't know what it was. It was closed on one side, a great big place where there was water. And because that water came from our well out into that place, and it was big. We had a little ditch. I think we had a little small length of hose from the well to the little ditch, and then the water ran down to that slough, I guess you'd call it. I don't know what it was. And all winter, the water ran. In summer, it wouldn't freeze, so that it didn't. But so it wouldn't freeze, that's why the water ran all the time. So the well would never freeze. But because the water ran all the time, the water was lukewarm. All the water came out of the well lukewarm. So when it was time to wash, we'd get the water out in I don't know what you call those things. Anyway, we heated on the stove. It was a big, long and about like this, wide. I don't know what you call those things, but anyway, we took the water and put it in there and put it on the stove to wash. Heated it. It didn't need too much more because it was already lukewarm to get it out of the well. It was real soft water. Real good, and very good to drink too. It was good, really good water.
What'd your grandfather do for a living?
Well, he worked with the railroad. He was he was section boss. As long as I can remember, when he was working, he was section boss, which meant he had charge of repairing the railroad all around town and beyond. And in summer, sometimes he had what they called an extra gang at that time, and we went with a train that had the workers, and Grandma was a cook, and she cooked for all these men. And I went along because I was their little girl, so I went along, and there were other little girls because there was other people other men who took their wives and children along, and we lived in the train because, but it was comfortable. We had I think we lived in two of those, what do you call those? I think you call them those train things.
Boxcar?
No, yeah, they were box. No, they weren't. They didn't have slats. They were covered. Yeah, there were boxcars, but yeah, we lived in two of them. So we had, and then there was one that was the dining room where all the men ate, and my grandmother cooked for all those men. See, they worked all day and they came to eat at noon, and then in the evening and in the morning too, they ate before they went to work. So my grandmother used to cook, and then she and I used to come to Alamosa every once in a while because she was running out of food, so she had to come to Alamosa to buy food. And we went to all the stores where there was food, and I always went along, and all the men in those stores, because she paid the bills and ordered some more, so they always gave me candy or something. And when we went to the butcher shop, they didn't have any candy, so the butcher man gave me a wiener. And we went to, so I was well supplied by the time we got home with candy and things like that to take along. We didn't have to buy them because I got them for nothing.
What would you do to pass the time?
I played. We played, and I helped Grandma quite a bit. I was kind of young, but I helped what I could. And then there were other kids there, so we played. We went out. There were woods around because there was no town. We were out there in the hills, and we went out and picked berries, and the kids will do food around among the trees, and actually had a good time.
What was your grandfather's name?
Frank Gomez.
And grandmother?
Grandma was, her name was Louise. That's where Louise got her name. Her first name was Louise, and her last name was Valdez, and we called her Mama Valdez. And we used Grandpa, we called him Papa Gomez.
Is that what your mother was, a Gomez?
My mother was Gomez.
What was her name?
Josephine. And my father's name was Jose. So they had the same name, my mother and father. My father was Jose and my mother was Josephine. They had the same name.
Do you know where they met?
Well, see, when my father was probably high school or near high school, he came to school in Alamosa. And my mother was just quite a bit younger, but she was going to school too. And that's where they met. And then when he came home to New Mexico, he wrote to my grandfather and asked him if he could write to my mother. And my grandfather said, if you want to marry her, you can marry her, but you're not going to write to her if you're not going to marry her. So what happened? They got married right away. And my mother was 16 years old, I think.
How old your father would have been?
I don't know. He was quite a bit older, but I have no idea how old he was. Probably in his 20s someplace, early 20s.
Do you know where they got married?
In Alamosa. They got married in Alamosa, Colorado. And first they had first they had the engagement party, you know, and the engagement party was the duty of the bride. They had to take care of that. So Grandpa Gomez went through all kinds of expenses to make it really big, and he was so proud of the fact that he really did it up well. And then, of course, the wedding was the duty of the groom, and but Papa Veta wasn't as generous or wasn't as rich either. He couldn't afford to put in such a big party. So Grandpa Gomez was very proud of the fact that he beat him.
Where was your grandfather at the time? Did you know him growing up? You're on Via Beta?
Well, they lived in La Puente, New Mexico. They were on a farm. And when I was growing up, I hardly knew him because I was always in Alamosa with my other grandfather. But I came home every once in a while and stayed during the summer. And that's when I saw him. And then, I don't know, he used to raise sheep. He had a lot of sheep. And then for some reason or another, he sold the sheep and bought cattle. And I don't know, he lost a lot of money somehow. And then he went to Carrizo, where my father and my uncle Porfirio were. And he staked out a little place. It was between the two. And he built a house there and started farming there. But he was getting to be an old man by that time. It was hard for him to work hard. And then he got sick. He had typhoid fever. He was very sick, so during the time that he was sick, he was in our house. My mother took care of him. He was in bed all the time. He was sick. And then he died in our house. I was home during the summer when he died.
Do you remember what year that was? What year that was?
I don't remember. I don't know what year it was. He died in the evening. He had asked what he wanted for supper, and he wanted atole. You don't know what that is, I'm sure. It's a drink that's made from cornmeal, and my mother made it for him, and it was from blue cornmeal, and they took it to him, and he started drinking it. They set him up. They had to set him up. He couldn't sit up by himself. Put pillows around him, and he was going to drink his atole. He started drinking it, and he died. All of a sudden, he just died. And then, of course, we had to see that he got buried, and the Uncle Porfirio and Dad made a coffin for him, and my mother and my aunt lined it with a gray material inside and out, and he was buried by the little church in where? In Carrizo out there. They said the church isn't there. I think Bill or Luis was telling me the church isn't there anymore, but the cemetery still is, and he's buried there. And my grandmother, when she died, they took her and buried her beside him. So they're buried there.
Do you remember much about your grandmother?
The only thing I remember is that when Grandpa was sick, she stayed with us. And most of the time, she sat by the stove in the kitchen. I don't remember her doing very much. I think she sewed by hand, mended clothes and did like that.
All right, so your folks got married in Alamosa. Then what they do?
Then they went back to La Puente and they lived right. Grandpa had a real long house. You can still see the house, and it's a real long house. And it had a porch on the back and on the front, big long porch. Okay. Then the house was long, and then on one end, there was an angle that made sort of an L-like. And on that L part is where Uncle Porfirio and his wife lived. They had, I don't know how many rooms, probably 3 rooms, they lived. And then Grandpa and Grandma lived next to them. And at the end of that long house, the last 2 or 3 rooms is where we lived. In the same house, but at the end of the house. We lived at the end of the house. But we spent most of our time playing outside and going back to visit. You could easily visit. You were living in the same house. You just go down the porch and you could go and visit them, your aunts. And then the ditch passed real close, and they had a bridge that went over to where the animals were. They had cows and horses, and that's all, chickens. And they had a big part there where it was barns and stuff for the animals. And then on the other side is where they planted corn and whatever they planted. There was a farm part. I don't know if it's still there. I doubt it. I doubt that house is there anymore.
Is that what your father did for a living, though? Was he helping?
Yeah, Grandpa. They worked together. And so did Uncle Porfirio. They worked together. And when my dad was a young man, they had sheep. I told you that. They had sheep. And in the summer, they had to take them up to the hills, to the mountains, because it was too hot down below. So my father and a hired man would take the sheep up there. And Grandma gave them all kinds of provisions, food to take along. And one of the things she gave them was rice. She gave them, I suppose, a thing of rice. So the first time they were going to make rice, they decided to do it all, because they thought that isn't very much rice, that much rice. So they started cooking all that rice. And then it kept increasing and increasing until they had used up all the kettles that they had. They had all that rice cooked. I guess Grandma didn't tell them how to use their rice. They cooked it all at once. They used up all their kettles.